This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
In Egypt, the number of cases testing positive for COVID-19 shoots to 48. More than 100 migrants are found at sea trying to make it to Spain as Europe's refugee crisis deepens. And on International Women's Day, African women battle for equality. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. The impact of the desert locust invasion continues to be felt across East Africa. And in sports, Rwanda is upgrading the Kigali Golf Club to an 18-hole international standard golf course. We begin in Egypt. The government says the number of cases testing positive for COVID-19 has increased to 48. 45 of those cases share one location, a Nile cruise ship in the south of the country. Multiple countries have reported cases originating from Egypt. Here's Adel Al-Mahraoui with more.
In 48 hours, the number of COVID-19 cases in Egypt spiked from 3 to 48. At least 6 countries have pointed to Egypt as a source of their citizens' infection with the virus. Investigating these claims, the government discovered the epicenter of all these new cases, a touristic Nile cruise south of the country.
We didn't even wait for these countries or the WHO to officially send us communications about the infections. We have immediately moved. We have traced the 2 French citizens' movements in Egypt. All reported cases have one thing in common, that Nile Cruise 740 beyond this epicenter, there is no proof of other corona cases in Egypt, except the 3 earlier announced.
None of the new 45 cases has shown any symptoms yet. According to the health minister, they could track all the infections to one of the tourists on board. She has shown symptoms after leaving Egypt. When the WHO informed the ministry, they have quarantined everyone who was still in the country.
On the 14th day of the quarantine, while they were leaving the boat, we took our last samples from the workers. We've tested 171 tourists and workers. 45 have tested positive for COVID-19. 11 of them are now testing negative as of Saturday. All of them have not shown any symptoms.
26 of these new cases are Egyptians and 19 are tourists. There were 171 tourists and Egyptian workers on board that cruise, so expectations are more COVID-19 cases could be reported in the coming days. Adel Al-Mahraoui, CGTN, Cairo.
The governor of the Bank of Algeria, Ayman bin Abderrahman, is urging developed countries to come to the aid of countries with fragile economies and help them cope with the spread of the coronavirus. Speaking at a special session of the International Monetary Fund, Ayman noted the urgency of putting in place logistical and financial aid to counter the spread of the epidemic. He also commended the IMF director on strengthening cooperation between countries during the COVID-19 epidemic. Algeria is the worst affected African country with 19 confirmed cases.
I think that what was proposed by Algeria through the governor of the Bank of Algeria is a rational and good thing, because this virus has become a serious global epidemic that affects almost all countries of the world without exception. There are countries that are weak in terms of resources that cannot cope with the disease and its cost alone, without the assistance of the IMF International and world countries.
The world needs to intensify efforts. Coordination is required at this critical stage. There are countries whose health system is already fragile and will not be able to confront alone without aid.
Well, still on the coronavirus epidemic, China is seeing more signs of a stabilizing situation with a record low 46 new cases 41 of those new cases are in Hubei province, and for the third day in a row, all are in the capital, Wuhan. China's total number of confirmed cases now stands at nearly 81,000. Over 70% of those have recovered. Meanwhile, China has reported 3 new imported cases or infections of people coming from abroad. That total number has risen to 63. Outside of China, over 25,000 cases have been reported in 96 countries around the world. South Korea has reported 367 new confirmed cases, 7,000 cases in that country in total, as well as 50 deaths. Iran is the worst hit country in the Middle East. It's reported more than 5,800 cases with over 1,000 new ones. The death toll is now close to 150. Italy is the hardest hit in Europe. The death toll there has risen to 233 with 36 deaths in one day. It now has more than 5,800 confirmed cases, and the country has closed cinemas, theatres and museums nationwide. Now, March 8th marks International Women's Day, and this year, female health workers in COVID-19 wards in Wuhan are demonstrating high morale by dedicating themselves to saving lives and responsive care. Among them, military nurses and the pride they take in their missions. Zhou Xiaxin follows some of them.
Approaching the night shift, 28-year-old nurse Yang Banglan is girding her loins for the next 4 hours.
我知道这一次赴武汉前线是一场名副其实的出征。说真的，刚开始内心是有一点紧张的，因为我们是出生在和平年代，从来是没有体会过这些。但是呢，当我们收到一张特殊的机票和战友们登上那个飞机的时候，特别是当我们唱起“我和我的祖国”的时候，我的内心是平静和踏实的。 因为我知道我不是自己一个人去奋斗的。
Yang's neighbor shares the same pride.
这就是我人生中最重要的机票，最重要的没有之一。
Sun's job is to make sure Yang and others go into the contaminated areas safely and comfortably. Punctures, foggy goggles, red skin from tight gear cannot be totally avoided inside. Elsewhere in the buffer rooms, a restless man eager to go home is waiting for Yang's comfort. He doesn't know his wife lost her battle with COVID-19 in another hospital. He waits for a phone call from his daughter, which he gets the next morning. Treating the elderly most closely, the team knows pride doesn't come easy.
我们单位接受了一群来自养老院的病人。 他们有的人瘫痪，有的人脑梗，有的人阿尔茨海默，有的人大小便失禁，你没有办法去跟他沟通的，他没有办法表达。但是我觉得他们在我们这里没有家人，只有我们。但是我们让他吃到饱饱的饭，喝到暖暖的水，睡一个安稳的觉，不管是脸上、身上都是干干净净的。我觉得其实这就是我们对他最好的照顾。
Many patients have to endure major distress, but they try to cooperate. Yang says, and care in the ward wins respect.
在给一个病人做完治疗，然后在聊天的过程中呢，他是知道我们是军医，所以在结束之后，行动不便的他坐在床上，给我们行了一个举手礼。当时就是那一刻，我觉得我们做的都是值得的。
Yet, saving lives on the line bears extreme pressure. 4 a.m. Liu Dan races in relays. 10 hours ago, the 92-year-old patients required intubation and mechanical ventilation.
像这种情况，你害怕你班上这个人的病情变化会更恶劣，然后，如果我们把他们从生死边线上拉回来的话，那我们就感觉我们做了一项很伟大的事情。 特别大的一个成就感。
She admits some patients upon their arrivals are suicidal, at least in thought.
特别的恐惧，另外还有一个就是，他们感觉就是对生命就是失去信心，不想再继续下去。然后经过我们跟他的 心理辅导，然后等等一系列，然后他们就感觉看到了新的希望。
7 a.m. and hope continues. 35-year-old Chen Cui prepares a medical sachet for a 100-year-old patient.
小花，漂不漂亮？这里面装的是中药，它可以抗病毒。我就把它挂在这边陪你，好吗？哎呦，你真棒！哎呦，爷爷答应了，爷爷喜欢，是不是？
Due to some underlying disease, the man cannot move on his own. Chen and her fellow nutrologists used to massaging and patting him down. Chen says such responsive attention is particularly required in wards, including helping younger patients with things like their online studies. Her strong feelings of being needed were ignited on the first day when the military medics arrived at the temporary hospital. The police at the gate gave them a salute.
一直等到我们几百号人全部进到这个院区，他才放下臂膀。对，所以当时就觉得，在老百姓心里面，就是军队的医疗队可能是他们非常非常期待的，可能他们主心骨来了。所以从我们内心而言，我们其实是自豪感非常强烈。所以我觉得这都是我们每一天在这个前进和行动的一个最大的动力。
每个人都说女孩子结婚是最重要的时刻，但是我觉得我这一生最重要的时刻就是在我来，并且来的这一段时间都是人生中最重要的时刻。
周嘉欣 CGTN 武汉。
China's fire department says 43 people have been found after a hotel collapsed in the city of Changzhou in southeast China's Fujian province. 7 have been confirmed dead. Officials say there are still about 28 people trapped under rubble. Over 800 rescue staff are on site, including experts from the Ministry of Emergency Management. The hotel collapsed on Saturday evening during renovations. Authorities say the owner is in police custody. Now, as the coronavirus continues to spread throughout Italy, authorities have announced that the entire region of Lombardy and a number of northern provinces in other regions will be placed under lockdown.
Per le parti della Lombardia e delle altre province del nord.
For Lombardy and for the other northern provinces that I have listed, there will be a ban for everybody to move in and out of these territories and also within the same territory. Exceptions will be allowed only for proven professional needs, exceptional cases and health issues.
Now, about a quarter of Italy's population will be affected by the lockdown. Conte also said that a series of new measures would be enforced in the rest of the Italian territory, including restrictions on public gatherings and closure of entertainment venues nationwide. The unprecedented decree starts on Sunday through at least the 3rd of April. A leaked draft of the government decree caused chaos and confusion on Saturday evening as thousands of people left from various northern Italian railway stations heading south. By Saturday, Italy had reported over 1,200 new cases in a single day. That brings its total to nearly 6,000. The country's death toll is now the highest outside China. It rose by 36 on Saturday and now stands at 233. Well, Iran is reporting that a second lawmaker has died of COVID-19. The victim is 55-year-old Fatima Rahba. She was recently elected to the parliament from Tehran. Iran is the hardest hit country in the region so far. Iran's total number of confirmed cases has surpassed 5,800. There was a surge of more than 1,000 cases from Friday. Over 1,600 patients, though, have recovered. Several neighboring countries, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have banned travel to and from Iran. Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. On International Women's Day, African women battle for equality. And more than 100 migrants are found stranded at sea trying to make it to Spain.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Today marks International Women's Day, celebrating women's achievements and progress throughout the world. In Ghana, a new maternal healthcare initiative aims to help poor women who are detained in hospitals with their newborns for being unable to pay their discharge bills. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Oh, and the soap, we should put one here.
Giving back to the needy. Ghanaian social entrepreneur Vanessa Jan distributes baby care products at the Rich Hospital in Accra. It's part of her maternal health care initiative under her foundation called Sincerely V.
I did my prenatal care here for 7 months before going to New York. And yes, I was in a private, clinic. But while I was there, I started to ask questions to other mothers who weren't having the private care. And I was shocked at what I was hearing. I was shocked about the fact that women were sleeping on the floor with their newborns. They couldn't be discharged because they didn't have the financial being. And the fact that they really had the lack of care.
Vanessa launched her maternal health initiative, the Post-Pregnancy Bougie Express, in 2017. Funded by donations, the goal is to help poor mothers who are unable to pay medical bills. She moved back to settle in Ghana in 2013 after living all her life in the United States of America. In 2018, Ghana introduced a maternal health policy where women can access free services throughout their pregnancy. Despite the policy, women still make out-of-pocket payments for drugs, laboratory services, and supplies after childbirth.
Sometimes mothers come to our labor wards for delivering with virtually empty hands, not even one diaper, and they have to call in the social worker or the social welfare unit, and we keep running around to get them staffs. So we really appreciate what she's doing.
Many mothers in Ghana struggle to fulfill basic needs. The World Bank recently estimated that close to a quarter of the country's population lives below the national poverty line. Vanessa has helped thousands of mothers in various hospitals through her maternal health initiative. She hopes to set up pop-up centers across the country where mothers can access free maternal care and support monthly. Until then, she's stretching her hands to lift up one woman at a time, assuring them that they are not alone on the journey of motherhood. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Well, for more on International Women's Day, we're now joined here in our Nairobi studio by Doreen Ninahazwe, AU and East Africa Director for the One campaign. Doreen, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here in our studio. Now, throughout history, we've seen a number of strong women come to the fore and fight for women's rights. In the recent past, that hasn't been very different. We've seen Sudan's Ala Salah, Uganda's Stella Nyanzi, and even the young Miss Universe, Zozibini Tunzi, also making strong statements in defense of women. In your view, is that enough, or do we still have a long way to go?
Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm happy to be here. Just as you said, a lot has been done since the first Women's March in 1909 in New York, when women were demanding for equal pay, were demanding for right to vote and better working condition. We have seen that we have made a lot of progress. Women are now able to vote. Women are now able to run for political office. They are able to engage in different communities, be part of the political discussion. The women's empowerment movement have also taken place. So a lot has been achieved, but we are still very far from achieving equal gender equality. We know that it will take more than 60 years to attain it. Yet we had given ourselves the goal of 2030 to achieve that gender equality. So we need to really fast track the implementation. Yes, progress, but let's work to achieve that goal.
Indeed, indeed. And of course, as you mentioned, 2030 is the goal to achieve gender equality. But even though we're not quite there yet, the scariest part of it is that the world itself is changing and there are new challenges facing women all over the world. I want to talk about climate change briefly. In your view, how is gender equality affected by climate change, by the climate crisis? How are women suffering in the climate crisis, but also how are women perhaps playing a leading role in addressing these pressing concerns?
Absolutely, you are right. There are new challenges that we are being faced with. Just to talk about the climate change, let's look at agriculture. We all know that Africa is not the continent that emits more gases, but we are a recipient and we have suffering more from climate change. So in agriculture, for example, we know that the farmers in this continent are mostly women. So they are the ones affected. At one campaign, we say that poverty is sexist, which means that women are the face of poverty, especially if we look at the agriculture sector that I just mentioned. So it's important to get women on the table, to be part of the solution. They also need to be able to debate. They need to be educated. That's a critical importance for women to go to school, because we've seen there's a lot of progress made in enrollment of girls in school, but we also look at the statistic that tells us that 1 in 10 women are able to read and write, which is really concerning. So at one campaign, we believe that agriculture is the key, is a key component to get out of poverty, because you will not be able to fight poverty if your people are not able to feed themselves.
But interesting, there still are other challenges, even for those that do manage to get an education, they do manage to get to school, they manage to enter the labor force, but then they find discrimination in the workplace itself. We know that the discussions around the gender pay gap have been quite prominent in the recent years. Tell us more about what's happening in that regard, about discrimination against women in the workplace.
Yes, so we have seen a lot of discrimination. We've heard many women come out and talk about these issues. At least we are hearing women's voices, which is really important. But then we also need to make a lot of efforts to mobilize more women to demand this change, because nothing will be given to us on a silver platter.
Indeed.
So it's important for women to continue to educate themselves, continue to look at, the Beijing we are now celebrating Beijing plus 25 years, the platform for action. So we need to look at what needs to be done, continue to lobby our government, continue to make sure that implementation is fast track. And for that, it will take women to continue to advocate, lobby, and be at the forefront.
And we are out of time, but I do want to ask you very quickly, Doreen, what your view is on lobbying, or at least bringing men into the whole conversation. What's their role in the aspect of gender equality?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good question, because it's important to bring men along. We will not be able to achieve this alone. They need to understand why it's important for women to be at the table, why it's important to allow women to contribute to our socioeconomic development. So we need to sensitize them, because most of the time they understand women's issues as something that's only for women, but we really need to bring them along. We need to lobby them. We need to make them understand why it's important important for them to be involved. We are half of the world's population, so it only makes economic sense if we are also contributing to our socio-economic empowerment.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Nina Hasbe from the One Campaign joining us here in studio to discuss some of the challenges that women continue to face as we mark International Women's Day. Now, staying with the story, Nigerians are reflecting on gender-based violence and inequality in their country. CGTN's Ifeok Etang reports now from Jos, Nigeria.
This is a safe house where young girls who have been victims of trafficking are kept and rehabilitated. Anne Abok, the leader, and her team have been working with victims of domestic and sexual abuse for the past 9 years. Today, they are celebrating the birthday of one of the girls in the safe house.
The rehabilitation is where we turn victims to survivors, where they can actually be rehabilitated and reintegrated into society as active members. And of course, they'll have to be restored as well into their full potential, into their humanity, assuming their own personal identity, agency, and autonomy.
According to the International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, approximately 80 million women and girls still suffer gender-based violence in Nigeria. Martha Peters is a survivor of Nigeria's long battle with Boko Haram insurgency, having lost her husband and her 6-month-old baby while fleeing Islamist militants. She now does various odd jobs to take care of her remaining children.
I do so many hard labor to take care of my children. I do so many things to take care of them. At least the only thing I cannot do to take care of my children is to go and sell my body outside there for those people there to mingle with my body and spoil my body for me before I get something to eat.
The 2020 celebration seeks to draw global attention to gender inequality and to celebrate acts of courage and determination by ordinary women. This year, 2020's International Women's Day celebration is advocating an end to gender-based violence and also seeking to propagate economic justice, equal rights, and participation in decision-making in all areas of life. Experts say in more recent years, climate change poses a major challenge to women's struggle for equality.
We see a lot of droughts, we see clamoring for space, forced migration. And climate change is a woman issue. We are farmers. We are the ones that trek miles to get water. So you now see if we are able to come together as a people to look at this as a collective problem and not just women or not just to look down on one gender, but then we know that we're shared humanity and an equal world means a prosperous world.
Gender activists say the Nigerian judiciary have a major role to play.
If we can have justice, we cannot clamor for development, equality, gender equality without justice. We need our courts to work and to do away with stereotyping, to do away with toxic jokes, to do away with name calling.
The Nigerian federal government says that the 2020 International Women's Day is a call for the country to re-strategize and to focus attention on the issues of gender equality and women empowerment. Ifeok Etang, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Now turning our attention to some other news, clashes have broken out again on Turkey's land border with Greece as security forces crack down on thousands of refugees trying to seek asylum in Europe. Despite the EU insisting that the door remains closed, many of those stranded in the Turkish city of Edirne are hoping European leaders will have a change of heart. Michal Bardavid reports.
On Saturday, tension was once again high at the buffer zone between Turkey's Pazarkule and Greece's Kastanias borders. A few thousand refugees are still there, hopeful they might eventually be able to enter Greece. Clashes once more took place during morning hours. Reports say security forces from both sides of the border sporadically fired tear gas. Some migrants were also seen throwing stones towards police officers on the Greek side. Turkey's Interior Ministry claims over 140,000 refugees have succeeded in crossing the borders since Ankara decided to open its gates on February 28th. However, it has provided no evidence to back these figures. Also on Saturday, Turkey's Coast Guard issued a statement announcing Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has ordered them to prevent migrants from crossing the Aegean Sea because it is too dangerous.
Since Turkey opened its gates on February 28th, Greece has made it very clear it will not open its borders. But even though it's been over a week, some refugees say they are still determined to wait and see if the EU will change its stance to let them in.
Hani and his family have been in Edirne for the past week. They're waiting patiently at a safe area next to the town's bus station.
I want to go to Europe, but I want to go there legally. I don't want to cross by sea. That's why I'm waiting here. I have kids, 5 children, so I don't want to cross using dangerous methods. I don't want anything illegal.
Another Iranian family is also camped out here. They've run away from the clashes at the buffer zone.
I've been here for 8 days. I was in Pazarkule, but the children were really distressed. There were stun grenades and tear gas being fired. The children were very anxious, so we came here to wait.
Despite pressure by the thousands eager to enter Greece through the border, it seems unlikely the EU will change its course, as the bloc's foreign policy chief has warned refugees that Europe's doors remain closed. Michal Bardavid, CGTN, Edirne, Turkey.
Meanwhile, over 100 migrants have been rescued in the Mediterranean Sea, trying to make the crossing from Morocco to Spain. The Spanish Rescue Service found 2 boats stranded near Malaga. Among the passengers were a pregnant woman and 2 children. The Spanish Red Cross provided first aid, and then sent them to a makeshift emergency center for further examination. Spanish authorities say sea arrivals of illegal migrants have decreased by nearly a third compared to the same time last year, but daily crossings continue, with hundreds risking their lives. Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. The impact of the desert locust invasion continues to be felt across East Africa.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues for taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Well, it is now, we start with the latest on the investigation into the Ethiopian Airlines crash. A draft interim report from the crash investigators has concluded that the 737 MAX crash was caused by the plane's design. Unlike most interim reports, this one includes a probable cause determination, conclusions and recommendations, which are typically not made until a final report is issued. With this latest development, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board might be given a chance to lodge concerns or propose changes. A number of countries and cities around the world are considering the eventual phasing out of vehicles powered by fossil fuels. In Kenya, a company is working to build solar-powered tricycles. If successful, it could improve travel across the continent and help reduce pollution. CGTN's Wakista Nyabwa reports.
The world flies past in a blur as a man on a tricycle races down the path. It brings a rush of adrenaline, but the tricycle is more than an avenue for a fun afternoon ride. Its creators hope that this invention will help transform how Africa moves. The idea of an electric vehicle running on solar first came to Roger Christen while he was on a trip to Cameroon 30 years ago.
I was going through a small village where there was a big family. Half the family was dedicated to the task of fetching water. 7 kilometers during the wet season, 14 kilometers during the dry season.
It was hot, dusty, tiring work, but the scorching sun was a boon, and when he started his company, Roger decided to tap into it to help communities move more efficiently.
There is many rural off-grid communities. You'll find people who ferry a large amount of goods. You will also find a problem of no access. The access to all-weather roads is very limited. And you will find that in places where there's availability of transport, there's probably 1 or 2 pickups a day that takes goods from one point to another.
In Africa, many regions experience mostly sunny weather, and power supply can be erratic. The Solar E-Cycle team decided to design energy-efficient vehicles that could carry heavy loads over long distances. They built different prototypes until they settled on one with a cart at the back and a solar panel draped over the frame.
So the solar panel, what it does, it converts the sunlight to electricity. So this electricity is able to drive the bicycle by itself.
Riding in this vehicle is definitely a unique experience. It might look a lot like your ordinary bicycle, but it functions in a completely different manner. One thing that is definitely different is the fact that you do not need to pedal. Just one touch of the accelerator button moves the vehicle forward.
But that's not the only thing that the solar panel does.
It also generates electricity enough to power your house in the evening. So we've designed it in such a way that it can move for 50 kilometers in a day with the sun, and in the evening you can use it to power your house.
The company has won award after award for its innovation, but one of the most satisfying parts of the work they do is seeing their creation in action. A local caterer is now using one of the vehicles to deliver her food to her customers, weaving through Nairobi's famous traffic daily to get food to her customers.
They replaced one of their motorcycles with our solar-powered tricycle, and they saved about $80 of fuel alone in 1 month.
In the future, the company hopes to train more people to build more electric vehicles.
What we're targeting is 3,000 business centers across Africa, 15 million vehicles a year. That's our ambition. I don't know if we'll get there, but we'll try.
But they must secure an infusion of funds and build more partnerships to enable them move forward. So for now, their grand dreams are housed in a warehouse at a university in Nairobi, a space that they hope to emerge from as they help Africa ride into a greener future. Wilkisa Nyabo, CGTN.
The impact of the desert locust invasion continues to be felt across eastern Africa. In Kenya's Turkana County, swarms are multiplying and threatening the livelihoods of pastoralist communities. Here, once again, here's CGTN's Wilkisa Nyabo with more.
In Kenya's arid Turkana region, pastoralism is a way of life and a major source of income. But pastoralists like Epur Lorot now watch in frustration as locust swarms compete with his livestock over grazeland.
I had 80 goats and sheep, but at the moment I am now remaining with only 50. After the locusts arrived, I have lost 30 goats. This is because after the locusts arrived, they ate a lot of our animal feeds. If the locusts land on the vegetation, they are clearing everything, leaving nothing for our goats. This locust condition is also affecting us as pastoralists. Like now, our livestock feed has gone down. We will have no goats and no money soon. Our children cannot grow well when we don't have food to feed them if our goats die. We are pleading to our government that if they have to spray these locusts, they should spray them as soon as possible to prevent them from causing a disaster to us.
The Food and Agriculture Organization warns that if not kept in check, locust numbers will increase with every breeding cycle.
The conditions are now conducive for the survival of the eggs and hatching. So the climate is now very ideal for them to multiply. And the threat is real and a big one, if nothing is done. You see, this is the right stage of control. And any action at this time would be more appropriate, rather than postponing interventions at a later date.
Surveillance is a crucial component to control the desert locust invasion, but that alone is not enough. The Kenyan government has allocated pesticide spraying pumps, but it's been a challenge to satisfy demand.
We have had one aerial aircraft sent to Turkana, but it has been here for only 4 days, and it ran short of fuel, it ran short of the chemical, and even it's going for service.
All 7 sub-counties of Turkana have been invaded by locusts, and many are still waiting for assistance, which might not come in the short term. Wilkisanyawa, CGTN.
China has set 2020 as the year to completely eradicate the country's poverty. This will make it the first developing nation to realize the United Nations goal of ending global poverty and comes 10 years ahead of the UN deadline. How does a country, though, as big as China make this happen? And amidst the COVID-19 epidemic, will it reach its goal? CGTN reporter Lindy Mtongana has more.
The world's largest country, China. By the end of this year, every one of its 1.4 billion people will be above the threshold of extreme poverty. Chinese President Xi Jinping made this a priority back in 2013. In 2019, authorities said they had lifted more than 10 million out of extreme poverty. That leaves 6 million below the line, set at 4,000 yuan a year, or just over $1.50 a day. Another priority is to increase the income-generating capabilities of villages. This falls under the Industrial Development Strategy, basically developing industries that suit local preferences. And this is where preferential policies from the local governments and buy-ins from private industries come in. For example, one county in Guizhou province is making good use of its thriving guitar industry to lift people out of poverty.
I didn't have a stable income and relied on odd jobs. My 2 children are in school and my husband is ill. Life was really tough, but now my salary is about 4,000 yuan a month, which is enough to support my family.
The central government also sees education as key to ensuring the long-term success of the project. China has 56 ethnic groups and many have their own customs, languages, and ways of life. Among them, the Yi people.
It's now government policy that rural children attend kindergarten, and they enjoyed it. I find them to be enthusiastic. Here, they mostly learn the Chinese language, good hygiene, and nursery rhymes.
The World Bank says there are valuable lessons to be learned from China in its poverty alleviation achievements. But even after 2020, China's fight against poverty will not stop. The United Nations says efforts will have to continue to bring the extremely poor out of the poor status and to ensure long-term sustainability. Lindy Mtongana, CGTN, Chengdu.
Well, time for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. A Nigerian entrepreneur creates a range of products for natural hair.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
A growing number of African women are embracing their natural hair, and one Nigerian entrepreneur is determined to keep this trend going. She's created a range of products to make the natural hair journey easier. Let's take a look.
Mixing natural ingredients like moringa seeds, coconut and castor oil to prepare a sample batch of natural hair products in her compact factory. When the mix is ready, Idorenyi Francis pours it into sterilized bottles, seals them and brands them with her logo, adding Edet Natural product. Prior to 2018, Francis applied relaxers to her hair, but after embarking on a natural hair journey, she started to invite other women to come along with her.
May 15 of 2018, I walked into a natural hair salon and chopped off the perm hair. One of the questions I asked myself
was, why were you perming your hair? There and then, I started encouraging other women around me to go natural, that it is easier and our hair is more beautiful without applying relaxers on it.
Frances did not set out to be a natural hair products manufacturer. She was simply running an advocacy campaign for natural hair on social media. But along the line, things changed.
I was using the YouTube channel I have and my Instagram channel, and both physical, to encourage other women to go natural. I was doing what they call DIY, using ingredients that I found within my environment to make majority of the hair products that I was using at that time. I shared those recipes with my followers on the social media platform, YouTube and Instagram, and it worked for them. They kept asking me, ID, we need a product from you. Start selling these recipes for us. Sometimes we don't have time to make them ourselves. That's when I decided to learn how to become a professional formulator, and today I have a natural hairline called Add and Eat It.
But just why do more women prefer to perm their hair or rock foreign wigs? Frances says it's psychological.
I try to tell the African woman to change her mindset, because everything is in the mind. Your hair is beautiful. You need to accept that. Once you're able to accept that your hair is beautiful, then you'll be able to nurture and care for it. We need to walk past the stage where we think that the African hair is not suitable for all occasions. It is in the mind. Change your mindset and we're good to go.
And despite running a business enterprise now, Frances is still ever willing to give her top tips on maintaining natural hair. Her Add and Eat It natural hair product line has sold over 3,000 bottles within Lagos and beyond. She says her aim is to see every African woman rock their natural hair and to use the product to drive the change, one head at a time. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. In your sports news, Rwanda is upgrading the Kigali Golf Club to an 18-hole international standard golf course.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We start your sports news now with African football. Al Ahly held Mamelodi Sundowns to a 1-1 draw in their CAF Champions League